When things go well for Spider-Man, they often don't go so well for Peter Parker, especially when it comes to his love life. And while Peter has had a few of his own not-so-great moments, his many girlfriends have done him wrong on a few occasions as well. Now, one of Peter Parker's biggest red flags when it comes to the dating scene is the fact that he just mysteriously has to run off at the last second, or miss countless dates, or seems really distracted, or just not as invested as a typical romantic partner should be. And well, that's because he's Spider-Man. Having a dual life is never going to be easy on romantic relationships. While Peter has managed to make it work from time to time, especially when he actually tells his partners about the fact that he is Spider-Man, he has had multiple people dump him for it. This is first up on our list today because honestly, it's extremely fair for people to leave him for seeming to not be invested and present in his relationships, or even leave him for being a vigilante. Sissy Ironwood, Betty Brant, Deborah Whitman to a degree, and even Carly Cooper just couldn't really deal with Peter having such a busy life, and for Carly, it was him actually being Spider-Man that did it. But while Peter has had many love interests, Gwen Stacy is arguably Peter Parker's true greatest love. Before even MJ, Gwen and Peter shared a very, very real love that was viciously taken away in a story so iconic that Marvel has never really brought Gwen Stacy back. But they sure as heck used Gwen to mess with Peter many a times. For example, 2016/2017's Dead No More: The Clone Conspiracy. In this story, a masked man initially thought to be the Jackal recruits villains to work for him by reuniting them with lost loved ones who he has made by cloning. The Jackal clones Gwen Stacy and brings her on board with his plans by telling her that she and the others aren't clones at all, but rather the originals harvested from remains, which is why they're able to remember everything from their previous life. Now, Gwen Clone is obviously hesitant until convinced by seeing her reanimated father again. Gwen initially agrees to work with the Jackal, and though she does later turn against him, her siding with him in the first place set in motion a lot of eventual pain and heartbreak, and that lands Clone Gwen on the naughty list of people that hurt Peter Parker. But while Gwen is one of Peter's first real loves, Lian Tang is a more recent girlfriend of Spider-Man. After Peter Parker regained control of his body from Otto Octavius during the Superior Spider-Man arc, Peter helped raise Parker Industries into a powerhouse company, and he began operating out of his base in Shanghai, where he started dating a scientific designer named Lian Tang. Lian even helped to create the Spider-Mobile for Spider-Man, but alas, this romance still fell in the end, and it was because it was eventually revealed that she was covertly working for the villain Scorpio, who led the evil organization Zodiac, providing him with Parker Industries security codes in exchange for medication for her sick mother's treatments. When Scorpio threatened to have her disposed of as a loose end, she offered to bring Spider-Man to the pearly gates for Scorpio. She attempted to kill Spider-Man during Shen Quango's award ceremony, but she couldn't actually go through with it. Spider-Man did eventually forgive Lian for her betrayal, and she became his assistant as Spider Rider near the fall of Parker Industries, but there was no recovering the romantic relationship. Now, after Mephisto erased Peter's marriage to Mary Jane in that storyline, which we won't talk about, Peter had a new life and ended up being roommates with one Vin Gonzalez, a police officer who was partners with Carly Cooper, who is another one of Peter's eventual short-lived relationships. But before that even happened, there was Michelle Gonzalez. Michelle was Vin's sister, and even though she and Parker did not like each other at first, at all, and Michelle was initially super critical of Peter Parker, they started to date anyways after a pretty drunken one-night stand in Amazing Spider-Man number 601, and thanks to the villain Chameleon orchestrating some events behind the scenes. She then surprisingly became extremely overpossessive of Peter until Chameleon showed up and came between them, causing more problems until Michelle finally left for Chicago in a blaze of glory. Now, I mentioned Deborah Whitman in the first point, but there's so much more to Deborah's story. Peter met Deborah Whitman when he was a teaching assistant at Empire State University, and she was a secretary. But the relationship really became more frequent in Spectacular Spider-Man, where she and Peter began to date after issue number 46. Now, due to Deborah actually having a husband who was far from good to her, plus some mental instability that she was going through, and delusions of Peter being Spider-Man, which he was, Peter eventually helped her by dressing up as Spider-Man, and she ended up divorcing her husband and leaving Peter and New York for a better life. Now, fast forward to the aftermath of Peter Parker revealing his secret identity to the world during Civil War, and Deborah, she returns having written a new tell-all book titled, quote, Two-Faced: How Spider-Man Ruined My Life. Now, even though she seemed discouraged about the title and tone of the book, she's still committed to a book signing. Deborah eventually revealed to Betty Brant that the editors had forced her to exaggerate the mental damage that Peter had done to her in order to make for a better book. On top of that, Deborah's mother had been sick and the medical bills were far more than she could pay for, so when the Daily Bugle dug up all of Peter Parker's past relationships to get some dirt on him, she just jumped on the chance to write the book. It's just not a very nice thing to do, like, at all. It's pretty easy to say that Felicia Hardy, the sometimes hero, mainly villain known as Black Cat, is one of Peter Parker's most toxic relationships in so many different ways. But despite that, it's actually quite clear that Felicia really did have strong feelings for Peter, or I should say for Spider-Man. So much so that she was willing to literally attack Mary Jane Watson. Following Felicia breaking off her relationship with Peter and running off to Europe, she returns and is eventually informed by Venom that Peter and MJ are now married and living together. So what does she do? Full of jealous rage, she decides that she's going to get revenge on the pair of them by, first of all, dating Peter's friend Flash Thompson, trying to make Peter jealous, but then she breaks into their new Soho apartment and literally attacks MJ, threatening her and being an absolute nutter. Eventually, Felicia would repair her relationship with both Peter and MJ, but man, she was insane. But on the topic of Black Cat, her and Spider-Man did actually have a few romantic run-ins before they fully started a relationship and partnership in the Spectacular Spider-Man number 75. The only problem was this was strictly between Black Cat and Spidey, not Black Cat and Peter. Spider-Man met Felicia's mother and was introduced as Felicia's boyfriend. However, Spider-Man never revealed his secret identity to his girlfriend, and it was also kind of clear that Black Cat was really only attracted to Spider-Man while he knew pretty much everything about her. As the relationship progressed, naturally, she became more curious about the man underneath the mask. He eventually revealed his backstory, origins, and motivations to Black Cat before finally unmasking himself in the Spectacular Spider-Man number 87. And this girl was straight up repulsed by him. She did not love this nerdy kid Peter Parker. She just loved the heroic Spider-Man. This ultimately led Peter to dump Black Cat in the Spectacular Spider-Man number 100. But there's another side to that story which leads to my next point. Now, 2 issues after Spider-Man revealed his secret identity to Black Cat, Felicia came right back to him. Only this was when it was revealed to Spider-Man that the bad luck superpowers that she seemed to have were actually not real at all, after she got pretty badly injured fighting Dr. Octopus. This then gave Spider-Man pause, as he didn't want to put Black Cat in harm's way as they fought crime, and she felt kind of inferior because she didn't have powers. So, in response, she tried to buy superpowers. Seeking out scientific superheroes to help her, she ended up working with a very shady stranger who was actually working for Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. And by experimenting on Black Cat, they activated some latent genes, which actually did give her bad luck superpowers. Blam Blams would backfire on those who tried to take shots at her. Anyone trying to sneak up on her would trip on their own feet. It was kind of cool, but unfortunately, these powers also seemed to affect her superhero boyfriend. The longer Spider-Man spent around the Black Cat, the more Felicia's bad luck powers attached a hex to Spider-Man, infecting him with bad luck that caused him to trip, fall, forget how to use his powers, and even get caught up in his own webs. In order to actually protect him, Felicia tried to break up with Peter, but like I said in the last point, Peter beat her to the punch. This next one, our second to last, is kind of hard because it's kind of difficult to blame MJ for her choices here. The current run of Spider-Man comics has caused quite the angry uproar from fans, partially for the way Peter is portrayed, but also because Marvel just absolutely refuses to let him just be happy with Mary Jane Watson. The character of Paul Rabin is not a villain, but you bet your socks many fans see him as the true enemy to Peter Parker due to him being the new Mr. Steal Your Girl. So basically, at the beginning of this newest run, Spider-Man and Mary Jane get transported to an alternate dimension, with Peter eventually making it back, but Mary Jane being stuck there. Peter does everything in his power to try and rescue Mary Jane, but while this only takes him a couple of days, in this alternate reality, it's actually been 4 whole years. In those 4 years, Mary Jane had met and fallen in love with Paul Rabin, and they even had 2 children together. Needless to say, when she finally gets rescued and comes back to Earth 616 with Paul and kids in tow, she doesn't want to just abandon this new life and go back to Peter. It's utterly heartbreaking for the wall crawler, and God, I hate it. Just let them be happy. But finally, as I said earlier on this list, Gwen Stacy was arguably the greatest love in Peter Parker's life, and while Marvel hasn't really resurrected her at all in order to respect the story that she passed away in, they seem to have no problem taking her name, dragging it through the mud, throwing it in a sack, and beating it with a hammer. While the Sins Past storyline was eventually sort of retconned and is pretty much entirely forgotten by the stories that came after it and the fans, it still happened, and that is sin enough for us to talk about. This is the story where it was revealed that Gwen Stacy had actually had an affair with Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. And if that weren't bad enough, the affair resulted in Gwen and Norman having children together. 2 twins that were raised in secret by Osborn. These twins, the affair, and Gwen threatening to not allow Norman to see those twins became the new reason why the Green Goblin orchestrated the passing of Gwen Stacy way back in the day. And then, those 2 twins, yeah, they ended up gaining superpowers thanks to Osborn's altered DNA and growing up extremely fast to become the same age as Peter Parker himself. The twins were then deceived by Osborn into thinking that Peter Parker was their real father and was responsible for their mother's death, and so they struck out to try and bring him down. It was all incredibly dumb and unnecessary and almost destroyed the character of Gwen Stacy. And that is all we got. Thank you guys so much for watching and making it to the end of the video today on Top 10 Nerd. Big round of applause for you. My name is Adam Andrews. I will catch you all on the flippy flop, and even if I don't, stay safe and peace out, nerds. Whoop, whoop.